Listen, have you ever launched a massive project, poured just endless resources into targeting your ideal audience, and then realized you completely missed the mark? It happens all the time. Millions of dollars are wasted every single year by organizations that are aiming at the wrong targets, simply because, well, they're using outdated maps. So today, we're tackling a massive, fundamental shift in how successful organizations actually understand their market. We're moving past those old, rigid demographic models to something infinitely more powerful. Okay, let's dive right into this explainer.
So seriously ask yourself right now, do you really know your customers? If you were trained in traditional business or marketing, you were likely taught the absolute golden rule of customer segmentation. I mean, it's business 101, right? You were told to group people by age, by location, by income, by gender. Basically, you were taught to slice up the global market into neat, predictable little demographic boxes. But I actually want to actively challenge that fundamental training today, because here in the third decade of the 21st century, knowing your customer's zip code, their gender, and their tax bracket doesn't actually mean you know them at all. And honestly, it doesn't tell you a single thing about what they are trying to achieve. Think about the core definition of demographic segmentation for a second. It's essentially the practice of grouping a market by circumstance rather than by real, tangible needs. It's a very classic inside-out approach to business. Now, let's be fair. There's nothing inherently evil about demographic segmentation. It was highly effective for what it did in the past, when markets were simpler and choices were a lot fewer. But it just wasn't designed to decode the massive complexity of the modern consumer. Take buying a luxury car, for example. Two people in the exact same tax bracket might buy the exact same vehicle for completely different reasons. One might buy it because they have a deep, specific need for industry-leading family safety features, while the other might buy it purely for the status and prestige. Their demographics are absolutely identical, but their needs are worlds apart. Demographics just don't give us the high-resolution picture we need today. To show you exactly where this traditional method completely falls apart, imagine this. Your agency hands you a profile for a brand new marketing campaign. They've crunched the numbers, they've done the math, and they've given you your perfect target demographic. We're looking at two highly specific individuals. Both were born in 1948. Both are male. Both are certified billionaires. And, amazingly, they both live in actual physical castles. They're both English, have both been married twice, are globally famous, and are internationally loved and hated in equal measure. Now, on a traditional spreadsheet, looking purely at the data, these two individuals are the exact same target segment. You'd build the exact same product and run the exact same campaign for both of them based entirely on these shared circumstances. But are you ready for the reality of who those two demographically identical individuals actually are? One is King Charles, the other is Ozzy Osbourne. Yes, the Prince of Darkness himself, the legendary frontman of Black Sabbath. Now just think about that for a second. Even though they share the exact same rigid demographic data profile, nobody on the planet could argue that the King of England and Ozzy Osbourne have the same sets of daily needs. They live completely different lives. One is waking up for state duties and afternoon tea, and the other spent decades touring the world playing heavy metal. If we base our business assumptions entirely on a demographic data window, we are going to fail spectacularly because we've completely missed human motivation. And that failure to understand human motivation, that is the absolute hallmark of industrial age thinking. This is that old inside-out approach where a company starts entirely with its own products, its own services, and its own internal goals. They build something in a vacuum, stand at the center of the room, and try to just hurl those products outward at a market they've segmented purely by circumstance. They ask really simple, surface-level questions like, how old are you, or where do you live? When you try to map those basic assumptions onto a deeply complex, hyper-connected modern world, you don't get clarity. What you get is a chaotic, tangled, big, bad mess of overlapping assumptions. You just end up wasting time and money throwing solutions at people who simply do not have the problem you're trying to solve. So to escape all that chaos, we have to adopt what's called customer age thinking. This requires a fundamental shift to an outside-in perspective. And if I had to explain this like I'm 5, outside in just means you start with the customer's problem before you even allow yourself to think about your product. Instead of starting with what we sell, we start far outside our own walls with the customers and their actual functional needs. This model gives us a laser focus. By categorizing people by what they are actually trying to achieve, their real-world needs, we map our business directly to successful outcomes. Because when you know exactly what problem you're solving, you stop wasting money on irrelevant marketing. This direct alignment leads to vastly lower operational costs, significantly higher revenues, far better service, and ultimate enterprise alignment.
So, the crucial takeaway here is that definitive shift from segmenting by circumstance to categorizing by needs. And to do this properly, we really have to get scientific about it. We have to go well beyond soft, fluffy sentiments, where we just kind of hope the customer likes our brand or connects with our corporate values. A scientific need is rigorous. It means deeply understanding the exact metric of success for the specific customers you actually want to do business with. What does a win look like in their daily life? Once you define that exact, measurable outcome, your organization's only job is to work in parallel to engineer a direct path to that specific success.
But here's the thing. Identifying a need is really only half the battle. The other half is knowing exactly whose need you're actually fulfilling. To move from theory into real execution, we have to recognize that an organization doesn't just have one giant homogeneous blob of customers. We actually have to categorize 3 distinctly different types of customers within our ecosystem. And we're not just talking about the moment a transaction happens at a cash register either. We have to map this categorization across the entire experience lifecycle, from the early upstream moment a need first arises, all the way downstream to the moment that need is fully and permanently satisfied.
First up, we have the funders. Put simply, where does the money actually come from? The funding customer is the person, the department, or the entity that is physically paying the bills. And let's be very clear about this base reality. Without the funders, your organization simply does not exist. They provide the vital financial lifeblood that keeps the lights on. Because of this, traditional businesses have historically totally obsessed over the funder. They poured 99% of their attention and resources into appeasing the person writing the check, often to the severe detriment of the rest of the ecosystem.
But the people paying the bills aren't the only ones who matter in a modern economy. Enter our second category, the watchers. Watchers are the stakeholders who are not directly involved in delivering the customer experience, and they definitely aren't paying you for it, but they have a massive, vested interest in its successful outcome. Think about industry regulators, internal compliance teams, safety boards, or even your shareholders. They aren't delivering the service themselves, but do not underestimate their power. If a watcher's specific needs for compliance, transparency, or risk mitigation aren't met, they possess the absolute authority to veto your project or shut your entire operation down overnight. And that leaves our third category, which, let's be honest, the vast majority of us fall into, the enablers. Enablers are all the individuals and entities we interact with to actually deliver that customer experience. Decades ago, we might have just called them our internal assembly line employees. But in the 21st century, the definition of an enabler has completely exploded. Today, this category includes gig workers, cloud hosting providers, third-party logistics networks, global suppliers, and freelance partners. They are the essential delivery mechanisms. They provide the literal tools and networks required to turn an idea into a successful, real-world outcome. Okay, so now that we have our funders, watchers, and enablers firmly defined, I have a quick pop quiz for you. Think about a massive global service ecosystem, like Uber. Who is Uber's absolute most important customer? Given everything you've ever been taught, your immediate instinct is probably to say the passenger, right? The person sitting in the backseat paying the fare, the funder. I mean, think about the billions of dollars Uber spends on rider-facing marketing and promos. It feels incredibly logical to assume that the one handing over their credit card is the most important VIP piece of the entire puzzle. But if you guessed the passenger, you'd be entirely wrong. In Uber's ecosystem, their most strategically important customer is actually the driver. The driver is an enabler. Even though the passenger pays the bill, without a driver actively out there on the road, with a functioning vehicle and the digital tools to run the app smoothly, there is absolutely zero service to deliver. Uber only succeeds when it accurately categorizes and fulfills the specific needs of the enabler. Needs like a seamless app interface, immediate payouts, optimized routing, and physical safety. When the enabler's needs are perfectly met, they automatically deliver a flawless ride to the passenger. And look, this isn't just some quirky exception limited to modern Silicon Valley tech companies. Highly successful legacy business leaders like Richard Branson hold this exact same philosophy. Branson has famously argued for decades that if you take care of your employees, they will take care of your customers. If you don't give your employees and your partners, your true enablers, the right tools, the right techniques, and the right environment to deliver success, you are going to fail anyway, no matter how much the funder wants to pay you. Prioritizing the enabler's needs creates a self-sustaining engine of success. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to challenge you to look really closely at your own business, your own daily operations, and your own ecosystem. Stop categorizing your market purely by circumstance, like age or income, and start categorizing by true needs. The shift is non-negotiable for modern success. Ask yourself this. If your business completely disappeared tomorrow, which enablers would actually miss you? Who relies on you to get their job done?
Figure out exactly who your vital enablers are, figure out exactly what they need to be successful, and empower them to the absolute fullest extent possible. Because I promise you, when you finally do that, you will never struggle to find a funder ever again.